And actually, now that you say that, that might be true. I think
we have.
Yeah, I'd like to talk.
I call this meeting of the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First of all, I'd like to welcome AJ Miller from Black Butte High School. She's a junior there, and welcome her to join us as on the board tonight. So welcome, AJ. And we'll proceed now with recognition. Mrs. Bolton.
Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, and members of the board, and Ms. Miller, if you'll join me down front for recognition. First, we would like to recognize Ms. AJ Miller. She is our student representative from Black Butte High School. We would like to thank AJ for joining the Board of Trustees this evening and sharing a fresh student perspective. AJ's attendance sends a positive message to all of the student body to become involved in a respectful way. Our students are capable of great things. Civic engagement is one of those things. Thank you, AJ. If you want to come on over here real quick. Next, we would like to recognize Tracy Burton and her students who presented at 2 summer academies on data binders, allowing for students to have ownership of their learning and bridge student-teacher relationships. Congratulations to Ms. Burton and the following students. So Ms. Burton, if you want to come on up. And if I could have the following students please join me: Maddie Chubb, Dion Bridewell, John Thompson, Denon Ziegler, and Colton Pedersen. We could give them a round of applause. Dr. Wells and Miss Searle will have you join up front in pictures, so you can't take them.
Cheese. And one more. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you guys. Congratulations.
And that concludes recognition for this evening.
We'll now proceed with roll call.
Mrs. Cochran?
Here.
Mrs. Schumacher? Here. Mrs. Summers?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Wood?
Here.
Mr. Wright?
Here.
Chair Jellicoe?
Here. We do have a quorum. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda, which does include a couple of addendum items.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We'll now suspend the board meeting and open the public hearing. I'd entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Wood. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Wright. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. So we are now in a public hearing to amend the 2023-24 budget. Please.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Board of Trustees, Superintendent McGovern. The purpose of this public hearing is to review the budget amendment brought forth to the board tonight. I'm going to have, okay, it is being displayed right now, and the budget resolution encompasses 5 grants. One is the ESSER 2 Social Emotional Learning Grant. We are reallocating funds to adjust the grant for final spending to purchase supplies and materials. ARP HCY1, reallocation of funds to adjust for the increase in the indirect cost rate. ARP HCY2, also reallocation of funds to adjust for the increase in the indirect cost rate. ESSER 2, Social Emotional Learning, reallocation of funds to adjust the grant for final spending to purchase supplies and materials. And ESSER 2, Digital Learning and Virtual Education, reallocation of funds to adjust the grant for final spending to purchase web-based programs. And again, you will find as part of the budget hearing, the spreadsheet that we generally send that shows how the grants, primarily the ESSER grants, have been spent. The ESSER 2 funds are now closed. And so those grants, once everything is brought into the district and paid for, these funds will no longer be part of the district moving forward. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. We have received no public comment for the public hearing. Is there any in-person public comment regarding the budget? Any in-person public comment regarding the budget? Then I'd entertain a motion to return to the regular meeting. It's been moved by Mr. Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We are now back into our regular meeting. Superintendent reports. Need for a replacement, Rock Springs High School. Superintendent McGovern and Dan Celeroli. Stand right.
Board of Trustees, members of the community. It's a pleasure to present before you tonight. What Mr. Celeroli and I would like to talk to everyone about is to share some factual information about the need for a replacement Rock Springs High School. So if we could go ahead, Zach, and start. The first thing on here that I think is really important for our community to know is the importance of tradition. And we know that Rock Springs High School had their first graduating class at the James Drive building in 1971. But one thing that is very important, I think, for our community is about the district crest that's actually showing on the front of that presentation. That actually is 96 years old, and it was founded on December 10th in 1927. And so just a little bit of history about that. It was actually developed by 4 Rock Springs High School students that were members of the student council at that time. And so what they wanted was a symbol that represented what their student body encompassed. So the first thing, and you might notice we have one up there, that the high school seal or the crest, it's got different names for it, but it started with Rock Springs High School and it actually expanded to be the district logo and symbol. So on the bottom part, it has the sagebrush on there, which is the landscape, of course, of Sweetwater County. But it was that landscape that turned over to be the name of the yearbook at Rock Springs High School. It's called the Sagebrusher. And then also it has the pick and the shovel, which at that time, the coal mines were the active industry. And we know that that is ever changing for us and minimalizing over the past several years. But we also know that in moving forward, we have other industries that make Sweetwater County our manufacturing cornerstone for our state. Also, last Thursday, we were able to attend a meeting over in Green River, and it talked about the industries that are planning to come to Sweetwater County as far as nuclear, carbon, and more in Trona. So we're excited, not about where we've been, but about where we're going. The other part on here is the book and the torch on that symbol, and that really depicted scholarship. It was about what the students needed to know and be able to do to be a graduate of Rock Springs High School. and what it meant to be a graduate of Sweetwater #1, and that still holds true today. And one final part on that district seal that's really important about tradition is the cup on there, on the bottom part that's right above the sagebrush. The students at that time, now remember, this was 1927, they named that to be what was called their loving cup. So imagine high school kids, they named that the loving cup. And that really stood for being a team member, camaraderie, sportsmanship, those kind of skills that we need to be able to work with others and participate in society. So with that, when we start off, we know that that is 96 years old. So it would be an amazing thing if we had a new school in the works for that, when that would turn 100 years old. That would be great to honor tradition. Next slide. Just a couple of things about the history of Rock Springs High School. It really has a design from the 1960s. And teaching back then is very different than what we have for teaching now. We focus very much on learner-centered classrooms. Back then, classrooms were built in more rectangle spaces. The teacher stood in front of the classroom, and it was a very different type of direct instruction that the building was designed for. No longer meeting the needs of what our students need for now and then the next years into the future. In 1971, on January 31st, that's when they had the dedication ceremony for the new high school up on James Drive, and 1971 was the first graduating class. The building at that time was only 2 floors, and it had approximately 169,358 square feet. And there were 675 students in the building, and it served grades 10 through 12. There were several expansions. There were 4 that occurred up at the high school. And with those, the first one was in 1975, where the swimming pool was put in. 1977 for the auditorium. 81 had the career and technical, at that time it was called vocational wing, so CTE. And then in 1984, it had the wrestling room and the auxiliary gym was put into place. And with that, in 1984, that's when 2 more floors came in. So the building right now is 4 floors. And our current enrollment at the end of September on the 22nd was 1,419 students. And the building has approximately 325,000 square feet to the school. Next slide. Okay. Back in 2007, what we want to paint for you is the timeline and the steps that the district has taken to, one, support the building, but also to connect the dots so that people can understand all the steps that the district has taken and what the needs assessments have indicated over time. Back in 2007, a company called MGT did an assessment on the building. And here's some things that they found. So please remember the time frame that we are in back in 2007. There were 3 lunches in the master schedule. And they noted that Rock Springs High School, that a closed campus was not an option for the building, that the cafeteria would be inadequate to serve all of the students at that time. Enrollment was 1,094 students in 2006. That cafeteria still holds true for our capacity. It's 220 students for our cafeteria. So people ask, why don't we have a closed campus? We simply cannot accommodate the amount of students and the needs to serve meals in the current cafeteria. The large amount of parking spaces with several vehicles at that time, they noted that vehicles still needed to park on James Drive, so very much holding true for today. And they made a note that the size and the complexity of the school, that it was impossible to supervise. The building was too big with the design to have adequate safety all the way through the school. The high school general classrooms adjacency, they felt that it was impossible for all the classrooms to be located by the bigger areas. So the design, it was impossible to be by the gym, the auditorium, those kind of things that make it feasible for today's learning. The media center and the shops included. They mentioned in 2007 that the restrooms were aged with very small entryways. And one thing that we noted is we put in some photos. They are not from '07, but they are recent photos. And what we were trying to illustrate here is that the concern from the assessments from '07 are still visualizing what we experience up there today. So the top photo is the cafeteria, about what that looks like on a daily basis for that. And then on the bottom photo, the overflow of students, that's actually in the gym up on the top by where the mezzanine is, above Tiger Stadium. And that is actually the overflow. And there have also been times where our students, there is no room and they will eat on the floor so they have a place to sit, or they simply leave the building. And one thing that is really important to note, when you have a cafeteria the size that we do, that it opens things up for tragedies to occur, because you're asking a large amount of students that do not have the ability for a driver's license to stay in the building, but others to leave. And those types of tragedies have occurred before. And it's a very difficult situation when it could have been prevented. Next slide, please. This one right here, we wanted to talk about the district-owned property. And so we get asked a lot of questions about the land. Where did the land come from? How much is there? And why are there so many schools over there on that side of town, which is a great, great question. So in January of 2008, the land was finalized from the Bureau of Land Management, from BLM. There's a total of 125 acres that are over there. What's really important is back in '06, with previous administration, that plot of land was slated for a multi-school complex. So back then, it was geared to have different schools on that site, with there being elementary schools and then also being the land for a full replacement high school. Here on the photos, we wanted to illustrate what this looks like up there on a day-to-day basis. So when you take a look at the buses, we know that down with facilities, we've done some renovations in the front of that school to make more room for where the buses enter, and so that we can adequately accommodate students that ride district transportation. But as you can see right there, it is still a very tight fit. And the part I will say that is, there isn't a day that goes by I worry about a student going in between those buses. I worry about staff that go through. It's just a very busy area. And we know that we have staff from Rock Springs High School that's out there, but there's just so much going on all the time. And we know the security concerns that were pointed out clear back in '07. Also, the other photo that is on there, it talks about the parking, and just to show you what that really looks like on there. And if you've ever driven up there and tried to find a parking place, that is a nice, unique challenge. When we have district trainings up there, we encourage our staff to carpool. Otherwise, you're not going to find a place to park. And our staff feel that daily, and so do our students. Dan.
Timeline. Mercer stands for most cost-effective remedy. A Mercer study is required. Anytime somebody thinks that they need a new building, they come out, they do a study. Then they give the districts $50,000 to go out for professional service and hire somebody to come in. And usually what they do is they get together and they talk about what your goals are and then how can we achieve them. If you want to upgrade your school or you think, hey, I need a new school, state doesn't just let you get a new school. They look at this Mercer, they go through it, and what the Mercer shows is taking your structure, they go through the building to see, hey, is it sound? Can we do something with it? Do you meet the guidelines for whatever the guidelines at the times that have been published? The last ones were published in 2018, I believe. So there's a criteria that they have to go through, and they go through all of this just to see if in fact you can add on. The Mercers that we've had in the past have always been with capacity. Okay, it wasn't until just recently that we had to have something done because of needs. So when they come in with the capacity, they actually offer different options. This site, if you look on this, Zach, go to the next slide, sorry. This site is the site of the school. Okay, on the school, this is just over 22 and a half acres. It is one of the most, if not the most restricted school site for high school in the state of Wyoming. Okay, they came up and they looked at three different options. One was non-construction. Usually non-construction is, can you move the kids someplace else? Can you distribute them across, they do that with capacities. Anybody who's in legislative now knows that Laramie's trying to get a new high school, but the state statute says you have to have capacity throughout the entire district. It can't just be in that one area. So that wasn't an option for us. We have no place to put anybody. So that was your feasibility as far as non-construction, moving the kids. The renovation, no matter how much you renovate, there's only so much square footage inside of a building. And Rock Springs presents a challenge. If you add on to the building, first of all, the state won't let you add on because it's a restricted site. But even if you could, then you fall into new parking guidelines. Okay, Rock Springs has one of the tougher parking guidelines in the nation. They actually let us, we went through a process where they kind of alleviated some of the parking issues at the satellite school, but even so, we still have more parking spaces required for a school of that size than just about anywhere in the state of Wyoming. So that wasn't possible back then. The site just can't support any more parking if you're cutting away from the parking spaces. So the next one was addition. Addition's not feasible, renovation's not feasible, reallocating the kids other places not reasonable. So it ended up going to the next option, which was another school. Zach.
So just real quick before we move to that next one. So with that being a restricted site, knowing that behind the high school, of course, is the railroad, and then all around the high school on the other sides, of course, is residential area. And so the 4 renovations that took place in those earlier years have maxed out that plot of land.
2015, we hired Bassetti, the state directed us to do another Mercer. So this was our second Mercer for the same request. The Mercer went through Bassetti Architects out of Seattle and Plan One, who was local. The idea was for them to develop a master plan. The master plan was for a full build-out high school. We have 125 acres, as Kelly mentioned earlier. We have 67 acres that is still available out there to develop. For high school site guidelines, the state requires, as part of their guidelines, you have to have a minimum of 20 acres and 1 acre for every 100 students. So when you figure out how many students you have, that is okay, but you have to look at how long this process takes, and then you have to go 5 years beyond what the completion date is. And you look at your cohort study to see what your actual student population will be 5 years beyond the first day that you open up. I came from a district where before they used to do that, we built a school, and the day that they opened it up, they were undersized. So the state had changed that. They had enough of that going on throughout the state. They said project 5 years out. So for us, projecting 5 years out through most of the cohorts gave us over 2,000 students in the Rock Springs High School. So with that, you end up with over 40 acres. That leaves us 27 acres. 20 of it was dedicated to parking. The other 7 would go to enhancement areas because the state doesn't fund tennis. They don't fund practice fields. So that would give us tennis courts, give us practice fields, just other ancillaries that go along for sports. Then the other thing was the current high school. Okay, we built a satellite school on this massive site, okay, 67 acres. The satellite high school takes up less than 1 acre right now. And you'll see in a couple slides down the road how we actually didn't get what we were paying for when we designed that school. It came down to value engineering, and we'll show you that in a minute. The project was put on indefinite hold. What happened was we went to a legislative, it was a JAC committee, and we got snowed in, or snowed out. We were stuck in Rollins, and we were communicating with our legislators who were at the Joint Appropriations Committee. And we had a member from the committee, not from our community, who made a statement that was just totally false. At the time, we were in competition for funding with Cary Junior High. And the representative made the statement that we did not own the land. That was not true. We have the land. We have had the land since 2008. And because of that, the legislators started talking back and forth saying that, well, by the time we procured the land, we were already at 95% drawings for 121,000, almost 122,000 square foot building. But because of that statement, the funding was given to another district for a different school. Next slide, back. Okay, this is, let me walk over here. This is, take the mic. On the original drawing, this site is supposed to be, this lighter shade was what we were supposed to get. That's 121,000 and change, almost 122,000 square foot of a building. This is the master plan that Bassetti was supposed to develop. We presented this plan. If you look on the master plan, getting back to what the board had asked earlier at the work session, this shows the body of the school is right here. This is 2 floors. This is an auxiliary, well, this is actually the main gym here. This would be auxiliary gym, wrestling areas, swimming pool areas. This is your auditorium plus other office space and classrooms. Back here, this would be the cafeteria. Where the cafeteria is now, for those of you who are familiar with satellite, that actually becomes culinary arts. Okay, so then you have your cafeteria up here, media center, and central kitchen is all moves out to the northwest portion of the site. Auditorium, most common question we get is, well, can we save the old auditorium because we're not going to get an auditorium? Yeah, you get an auditorium as part of the guidelines, as part of the design. So you do get an auditorium, you do get a gym. Anything else that's considered enhancement, the district has to fund. Okay, as far as the site, for those of you who remember, there's a water line that runs through here. Okay, that's why the site is designed the way it is, because we're on the northwest side of the water line for the building. We're on the east side for the actual the football field, practice fields, everything. We came close to the site here because after talking with the folks that were in charge of they said they're not concerned with any field activities. That's why we actually have a small field up there now. Here's our parking. This would be roadway. One of the questions was asked about easements for BLM. As long as we make BLM aware of what, and they have seen this master plan, as long as they are aware that we are putting roads in here to kind of alleviate traffic flow right now. This is a little bit different because we don't actually have this circle here. This actually comes in right through here and connects. Then it splits off and goes this way. And since we don't have this building, we have parking here, and this actually comes out that way, for those of you who are familiar with the site. That's what was proposed. When they denied us the funding for the 122,000 square foot building, they basically said, well, what we're going to give you is, Zach, go to the next slide. Okay. They basically gave us What is in orange, and see where we've got this blacked out? That was supposed to be part of the building. But during value engineering, the value engineer guy said, Jim Coleman, for those of you who know about the value engineering, they said, well, you can save a ton of money by let's not put these classrooms on the north side because you have to put in footings and foundation. Why do that? Just take this and move it over to the south side. So that gave us 2 floors. The original building was supposed to be two stories, but what they did was just gave us this that is shaped in orange with a 2nd floor. That's all we got out of the whole deal. So is it adequate for satellite school? Well, when we first, and showed them the program and when we first started the classrooms, yeah, but now it's not even adequate for satellite. Had they have given us what we needed, we'd have gone back to everything that's shaded in for the first phase. Well, now we're to the point where we need the full build out. This is the master plan for the full build out. Did you? Oh. Okay, so on the master plan, because we have a beautiful playing surface, up at the existing high school, but this would be the new stadium. We get funding for putting in a football field. You don't get funding for turf. What they do is they give you money for sod, then you have to come up with the difference for turf. But as far as the stadium concession stands, there's guidelines again. If you exceed the guidelines, they're not saying you can't have it, you just have to figure out a way to pay for it. The soccer fields, practice fields, tennis courts, this is the required parking that we would need for this size building right now. And I think we actually had a plan that we were at some point going to put parking in there. But anyway, that is, when they talk about a master plan, this is exactly what the master plan is. Zach, go back to the other. And this is what we have, the 95% build out already. So for us, getting funding is for 120, we already have the design for 195,000 or 121,000 square feet. We are at 95%. So because enough time has gone by, we need to go back and revisit for code changes and also the difference for design for the big, what I call the big box areas, because that's what the state refers to them as. The big box areas are your cafeterias, your auditoriums, and your gyms. So that's where we're at as far as our request. We already have the design. Okay, Zach.
So just real quick, Zach, if you'd go back to the one slide, just very quickly. So Dan had mentioned this area up here, and then in addition to that, it's all 3 of the striped areas that we did not have for the initial request for the satellite campus. So all of the striped areas. Okay, next slide, please. So next one, establishing the timeline. So then we were asked to do another Mercer. So here comes Mercer number 3. And this one was started in July of 2017 from Plan 1. And we finished that in May of 2018, where we had the final design for the current satellite high school campus. In January, I believe it was January 24th of 2022, we had our ribbon cutting for the satellite campus. And one thing to remember, on the initial satellite campus, it was to be for 598 students. And what we have over there now is a fraction of the building. It's 44,000 square feet, but it also has approximately 200 students that go to school inside that building. And we'll talk about that a little bit, about who that building serves. Right now, we have 2 academies that are housed over in the building. The first one is the Public Service Academy, And the second is the Health Occupations and Career Academy. And we need to give huge kudos for the administration up at Rock Springs High School, because what they have done actually is maximize the capacity use through the setup of the academies. So for example, if our students go to school in the morning over at the Satellite, in the afternoon, they go and do job shadowing or internships, and then vice versa for the other students in the other academy. So when they're out job shadowing, then they attend school in the afternoon. So they've really done a lot of flexible scheduling over in the building to maximize the use for it. The cost of the Satellite High School that we have right now is almost 18 million. So 17.9 million was the price tag for the current school. Next slide. One thing that we try to do, so we try to make accommodations the best that we can for our students that attend the Satellite High School or students that are up on our James Drive campus. So we have, through our transportation department and the administration at the school, we have buses that move back and forth in between the two schools to accommodate the classes that our students are interested in as much as we can. There are students that stay over at the Satellite campus all day until they go in and job shadow. We have students up at the James Drive campus that are there the whole day. And then, of course, we have students that go back and forth. One of the things when we were testifying for the need for a satellite campus was they had asked about who would be in that building. It was a concern about moving kids back and forth. And so one of the things that we had mentioned is about the academies going over there. And the reason for that was because the students self-select to be in the academies. So they apply for those and then they're entered into the academy. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, you are looking at a very different type of enrollment process for those. And so we've really held to what we testified to is exactly the setup that we are using over there in the building, plus some to make that maximize space allowed. Next slide, please. Dan.
Okay, FCA scores. FCA scores are facility condition assessments. They're provided statutorily, they were provided every 2 years by the state of Wyoming. Then what happened around COVID, they missed it. And I just going through my statute books, I transfer every year. And I noticed it went from statutory requirement of every 2 years to as needed. So that's a big difference. And I'm not so sure that's a good thing. But it was postponed, like I said, during the pandemic. In 2022, the state contracted Bureau Veritas, and they went out and they did an assessment of all 48 districts, all the buildings in all the districts. What they do is they go in and they do a facility condition assessment. After they're done with that assessment, they apply scores to it and come up with a facility condition index. In the past, the lower that your number was, the more need that building had. The higher it was, it went from poor to excellent. Okay, so it went from 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, 1 being poor. In January, our building, the high school, was assessed. In December, all of our buildings were assessed. And in May, we received a report. I want to say something about the report. When we got the report the first time, it showed us being number 3rd on the needs list. And then they said that, and that was actually presented to the school facilities commissioners. And then they called up the school facilities department, the construction division, said that they failed to factor something in, and so the list would be changing. So at the end of the month, at the end of August, they had another emergency meeting and they published a new list. We'll get into the list a little bit later on because the list is just one means to figure out who is actually eligible for new schools. Okay? Zach? Okay, Bureau Veritas. Like I said, they're a company that was hired by the state of Wyoming. In previous years, I sat on the boards and that we hired the people to do the assessment. All the assessments prior to were done by Facility Engineer Associates out of Colorado. Bureau Veritas, they come over, and what they did was they scored everything, and then they put it into everything from immediate need to long-term need. And what this particular slide depicts is, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but if you look at, it has, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Zach. On the bottom for where it says immediate needs, they've got $2.17 million. Okay, that's less than 1 year. That's how much money that Bureau Veritas says that I have to put into certain systems. They do list the systems in the report. In year 1 to 2, $18.2 million, all the way on out to 20 years. At the end of 20 years, they say I have to spend $97.8 million, so roughly $98 million. That is not construction costs. That is in-house jobs. So that is, if you went and if I told you, you came brought your car to me and I said it's going to cost you $1,000 to replace a transmission, that's if you do it yourself. It costs you $2,000 for the transmission, but you have to put it in. That doesn't include the mechanic cost. So I would have contract costs on top of that. All those prices would have contract costs on top. It's important that people understand that. Okay, they put an inflation rate of 3%. I've been doing construction since I was 15 with my family. I've never seen construction in the latter years less than 7%. And this is my ninth, well, I've built 9 schools since I've been with schools. Now, when you look at $97.8 million, and it looks like a lot of money, $160 million looks like a lot of money, but in the 160, you got soft costs, you got engineering fees, architect fees, things like that. So you've got roughly 8 to 10% of that cost is towards what they call a soft cost. Is it a big difference? Yeah. But in 20 years, does anybody, as the mortar and bricks starts to decay, you have to do what they call repointing bricks. I don't know of a person in Sweetwater County or Southwest Wyoming that does it. It takes a lot of issues 20 years down the road when the building is already 50 years old. You're talking a 70-year-old building. Now, I love working on old buildings. Probably throughout the state, I probably have salvaged more buildings than most other districts. This building is there's a lot that needs to be taken care of on it. So when you look at $97 million up front, that's us doing the work over 20 years versus $160 million in construction costs. That is a construction architect, that's all your costs. So seems like a lot of money, but in 5 years, if we got the funding now, in 3 to 5 years, you have a new building. You're not continuously going in. The other thing that we run into is skilled labor. It's very difficult to find skilled labor to do some of the things that need to be done to an older building. That's just a fact. Okay, next slide. What I did here this was done by Facility Engineering Associates. Remember, this is an FEA or FCA score. And what I did was I felt confident because I've dealt with these guys for the past 18 years. We called them and the district hired them independently to go through our buildings. And when I say that they hired them, they did the one thing that Bureau Veritas really didn't do. Bureau Veritas, they walked through the building and they surface checked things. Facilities engineer guys, they went through, they crawled spaces, they found things that were not discovered in the first go around. They did say that they found it interesting. Bureau Veritas looked at the buildings from a different perspective, but they came up with the same scores on almost everything. So that was kind of interesting. I passed that on to Jerry Vincent with the SFD. When it comes to the SFD, just so everybody knows, it is relevant, the fact that I have been dealing with the SFD, SFC, SCD since their inception. I have sat on almost every committee that they've ever had up until COVID, and then they have a new director and things are just done differently. So I've been heavily involved with the school facilities folks in Cheyenne. I just know the processes. So when I looked at Facility Engineering Associates, FEA, when I looked at their most critical substructure things, what I did was I took the ones that you have to shut the entire school down, in my opinion, somebody who's been doing this a very long time, in order to get it accomplished. When it says lighting and branch wiring, Okay, for those of you who aren't familiar with construction, but back in the day when they did the school, you might have one classroom or one breaker that handles 2 to 3 classrooms. You know, one of the things that we got back from the high school was how do we upgrade when we, or follow OSHA when we only have, 4 receptacles in our classroom? Yeah, but if you blow a breaker, it shuts down 2 other classrooms. In today, when we build schools, there's 4 circuits per 1 classroom. So how do you do that without tearing up walls and shutting things down in order to get, that accomplished? Then you go back to the communications, security and fire. Anybody who does anything with buildings, I can tell you, when you do multiple add-ons, security versus life safety, they're 180 at odds. It's very difficult unless you have a brand new building to bring them both in so that they're compatible with each other. It's hard, I'm not saying it can't be done, it's just very difficult to do because of the structures. They add on, there's different code compliance. It's just a different whole, just different way of doing things. When you look at emergency powers, anything that's in magenta, what I really felt that in magenta is that if you're gonna shut the building down, why wouldn't you do this? If you're gonna shut the building down to upgrade your wiring, why would you not, because most of the wiring is undergrade, if you're gonna jackhammer the flooring up, why wouldn't you do the plumbing? Why wouldn't you run sewer lines? Because they're also 50 years old. It just doesn't make sense to do one without the other. Could you do it in sections? You probably could, but I just don't know of anybody that would take on a project where you're just gonna do this wing that ties into another wing. You have to know the ins and outs of that high school. When they added on to it, they did it in a way that makes it very difficult to come in and just shut down certain areas of it to renovate it. The things that are in yellow, those are things that I admit, hey, ceiling tiles, yeah, we can shut down part of the school. We can do it at night. There's certain things that we can do. Lighting, we've done lighting throughout most of our school districts, changed over from T5s, T8s to LEDs. That can be done on weekends, so you can accommodate some of those renovations. So those aren't that big of an issue. Go to the next slide. Where I have greens. Some of those things in green are already done, and they're big ticket items. We've already working on replacing elevators, fittings. The fittings and furniture, FF&E. One of the big things that we had there, we actually scored by both companies, we scored poor condition. When they're talking about FF&E, one of the things that they're talking about for fittings is bathroom and toilet dividers. Those are less than 3 years old, brand new throughout the entire school. But the kids have destroyed them almost as fast as we've put them in. And they cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace. But you go downstairs by and the doors are off, the walls are broken. When we had parents say, well, what can we do? Tell your kid, if you see somebody destroying something, to let us know. It's not ratting out on anybody. It's now you can't go to the bathroom because you don't have any privacy. It's just the darndest thing I've ever seen. I mean, we spent a lot of money, bought a lot of bathroom dividers, and our basement is filled up with ones that are broken because the kids have destroyed them. So elevators. This year, we worked on elevators. Throughout the summer, we're still working on the elevators. So we are getting some of the big ticket items done, but I'm in the position where, okay, how much money do I spend on a building that is really, it's just it's becoming a money pit. I mean, the building structurally is sound. The columns go down to bedrock. The columns aren't moving. It's the slabs that are slab on grade that are moving. It's the sewer systems that have been there since 1971 that are now starting to show signs of wear. It's the electrical systems. I can't put chillers in the building. Everybody wants air conditioning. I'd love to put air conditioning. I've put air conditioning in 3 elementaries, and we've had to upgrade the power supply to those elementaries. The reason why it was easy to do those schools is because of location. I've got a box right out here on Jack Norris Drive. I ran it, we upgraded the power to the building for Overland. They have a chiller. Did the same thing at Walnut. Power's on the street, ran new power. The high school is a whole different animal. The power comes into different places when they put the additions to it, they've actually gone over some of the old conduits. It just makes it very, very difficult to upgrade it for chillers. So what we've done is we've added evap coolers. We've got evap coolers on junior high. Had to do the same thing there because same thing, power. Power is the big issue. Junior high, if you've been in there, I don't care, it's summer school or in the spring, it's generally pretty cool. I think the issue that we have at the high school is, and I've got more evap coolers coming, I just don't think that we have enough. And because of the duct system in there, the design where they pressurize classrooms, put negative pressure in the halls, and then they have these relief holes cut in the classrooms to pull the air in, it's just difficult to work with, especially in the old wing. Any questions? Zach? Okay, what this slide is major maintenance money. Okay, I usually average. My major maintenance account goes up and down because I get paid for square footage based on how many kids, how many people are in the seats. So when we build a school, we do a Mercer. Mercer does the projections 5 years out past the day that it's open, but if something happens and now you don't have that many kids that they projected, I still don't get paid for the square footage. I get paid less money for the same square footage because there's not any butts in the seats. It's part of the formula. Okay, so I get on the average, say $3.4, $3.5 million. Last year alone, I spent 1.3 million, almost 1.4 million just on the high school. Okay, now I have 40 buildings. Okay, we've got 14 schools, and I've got teacherages, I've got ancillary services, I've got storage, I've got transportations. So I'm spending almost a third of my dollars coming in. Last year, we spent almost $5 million because one of the things the legislator says, hey, we looked at your bank account, you've got some money in your bank account. Yeah, I know, because I'm saving money because when we have major catastrophes, I have to be able to fund it, and I have to be able to fund it right away. When we had a water line break years ago at the Overland, we just went ahead and fixed it, but we fixed it going against state statute, but they quickly went in and changed state statute that year to allow the facility director in Cheyenne to give me the okay up to $500,000 to move on emergency funds. So we spent more than what we brought in, but because we had the money to do it. Next slide. Okay, we spent almost $5 million last year. To date, up at the high school, we have a work program, work order program, and it's called School Dude. I've been using School Dude for as long as I've been doing this kind of work, so almost 20 years. We're all constantly telling people, if you have an issue in your classroom, send in a work order because we'll get to it. Well, one of the reasons why we do is because I have to account for my guys' time. I also want to make sure that things are getting done. This is from the fiscal year starting in July 1st, 2023. It's not to today because I checked it Thursday. Thursday, it had gone up another $40,000. Okay, so from July 1st, we spent $431,000 in maintenance. And that includes custodial, and what custodial does is if they have to deviate to fix stuff because they do stuff like changing a light bulb, things that are not part of their everyday routine, they have to charge out a work order, again, for accountability and for time. So you add $5 million last year, and just in July alone, we spent and like I said, I checked it on Thursday, $490,000. And that's in-house general fund dollars. Now, a lot of times what happens is when you look at the major maintenance, the dollars are like $300. That's because if our guys do the job, but for instance, changing a pump, I don't hire somebody else to come and do a pump. We have the ability and the skill set to do that and change out water pumps, heat for the boilers. So we buy the materials under major maintenance, and I use general fund for labor because major maintenance will not fund labor. It's not reimbursable. So you're constantly kind of working your dollars that way. Also, Zach, go back to the other slide. One thing I heard Marty, in fact, was saying earlier about having to defend my guys, and I do appreciate that. But what people don't realize, I just don't get I can't randomly fund major maintenance. Every single project I put in has to go to a project manager from the state of Wyoming. Every single year, they issue me anything that I have that is considered a 1 to a 3. Remember, 1 being poor, 5 being excellent. They scrutinize all of my projects that I put in for. If I don't take care of ones or twos or have a plan to take care of ones or twos, the state actually says you can spend 10% on enhancements. Okay, we've got a lot of enhancements throughout the district. Most of them are taken care of with rec mill dollars. But there are some building enhancements that when they, like the high school, when they determine that we only have 220,000 allowable square footage, somebody has to fund the rest of the stuff. If you have a roof go bad, I can't say, okay, this is where major maintenance starts. Okay, so they allow me to use 10%. State statute says, unless I take care of the buildings first with legitimate major maintenance dollars, I cannot use 10% funding. So most common people say, well, I'll just fund that with 10%. You can, but that's not what state statute says. So it's important to know that there are checks and balances when people say, well, you guys don't maintain the buildings. I'd be more than happy to show anybody what I have to do to prove that I maintain my buildings. And I would say it's probably more scrutinized than any other industry, unless you have OSHA or NIOSH coming in. Zach? Temperature issues at the high school. I've been here going on 10 years. Heard them all. Too hot, too cold, snow in my windows, sun's beating in. I get it. I really do. Again, what do I do? We're limited as far as the building itself. We did have a teacher, one of the teachers in the 400 wing. Okay, I know the 400 wing is hot. Hell, it faces the south side. Sun beats in it. It's all brick. The trees, the deciduous trees are gone. I know that it gets hot. Here's somebody who took initiative. She went and something, honestly, I never thought of. She tinted her windows. Tinted the windows, lowered the temperature in the building. So what did we do? We found out. We tinted all the windows. Got hired a company to come in and tint the windows. Somebody has a good idea. Just because it wasn't mine, I don't really care. As Mark Twain says, you can get anything done as long as you don't care who gets the credit. That's what it's about, right? We got kids in classrooms. We want them to be comfortable. So we tint the windows. That's 400 area is part of the original building that has it's got a ventilation system that really the only place you get outside air in is through the unit ventilators. They're hot water ventilators. They've got like a 3-inch dryer vent that leads to the outside. That's it. Now they do have what we call outside air. So we have tempered outside air. Those are the big air handlers. They dump into the classrooms, pressurize the classrooms. You've got one of two choices: open the windows and let the air go out that way, or shut the windows. And anybody who's walked down the halls in the high school, you see these, they're like 8x16 grills. They used to have fire dampers, but when we fully sprinkled the building, we disabled the fire dampers because they're no longer required. So you pressurize the classrooms, push the air into the hallway, then the exhaust systems suck it out. That's the design of the system. So what we tried to do is put these massive 75, 80,000 CFM coolers onto the intake air to cool it off. Same principle, anybody who has a VAP system at home, blow the air in, open up the doors, try to alleviate the heat. Trying to figure out how many CFM you would need, pretty tough to do. So what we did was, when we put them in, they worked. In fact, we went and a couple years ago, we put in indirect water coolers, VAP coolers. These systems are a massive cool product, and their statistics, they will give you the same air as what refrigerated air does, except for a third the price because there's no compressor. They have a system in there that's just cools off the pads and it subcools the water that sprinkles over another set of pads. And that's what the building originally had. The building actually had a piping system that went from the return air into the supply air. Okay, the return air had water that sprinkled on the pipes so that your air leaving the building, just like in a VAP cooler, cooled off the pipes and theoretically the water in those pipes. And then they ran those pipes into the supply air, and that's where you lowered the temperature of the outside air. That was day one design. Okay, that was the precursor to what we have today. Okay, those systems they're just rotted out. You can't find parts. Tried finding the manufacturer of them, can't even find the manufacturer of them. In order to change those things, they're massive units. You'd have to take the brick, everything out to pull it out of the building. So that's why we went with an evaporative system, pad system on the outside of the buildings to try to alleviate the pressure, of the heat in the buildings. So the heat in the wintertime. In Wyoming, we know it gets cold. Most of our older buildings are pneumatic controls. Pneumatic controls are not like your thermostat at home, which is 24 volt. And throughout our buildings anymore, when we upgrade, we have what they call DDC. They're direct digital control systems. They run off of a low voltage DC. Okay, the pneumatic controls, they have a central compressor, pressurizes air in copper lines and poly lines, goes through a thermostat. The problem with the system is they used to work great. High rises all over back east, used to see them all the time. When the compressor goes bad, they fail to heat. So sometimes even the summertime or this time of year, we have the boilers on. If a compressor goes down for whatever the reason, it fails to heat. So somebody comes in and says, man, it's really hot in here. And I've seen it, up in the 80s. It's because the compressor failed. So I was asked at the board workshop, what would it take to switch over to DDC controls? Again, it's one of those systems to switch over, you're shutting down the school because you have to go to every single damper, every single controller. Everything has to be switched over to a low voltage type digital control. It's not something that happens easily. And they're usually, just to do one of our regular schools, you're talking 280,000, 300,000 for a 75,000 square foot building. So you've got a 300,000+ square foot building. Trying to get that figured in with all the different floors be quite the task. Auditorium, the air conditioning units in the auditorium, I don't know why they were disconnected. There was a lot of systems that had been disconnected long before, years ago. We tried getting them going. When we switched over for one, it was running for a while, then it quit. We went to switch the other one over, and there was no power to it. Never had been power to it. So something happened along the line where, it was completely disconnected. The elevators, like I said, we're working on the elevators. We've got from 2014 to current date, we replace massive pumps on a regular basis. We have engineers come in. I generally, if it requires upgrading the system or if we have a system that continues to fail, I don't ever hesitate because it's paid for by the state to bring in engineers. We've had mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. We even had traffic study engineers come in up at the high school. So I'm not shy about doing that kind of stuff, and that reflects one of the other slides. Zach? Okay, sorry.
So we're down to just the last couple of slides to put a close on this. One of the things that when Dan was going over the slides that had the red and the purple on there, that was from the independent engineering assessment firm that the district hired. One point to mention that's very important is that they found that 74% of the systems currently at Rock Springs High School were fair to poor. That is right now, 74%. And so over time, those systems are going to move more downhill. A couple of things right here. As you can see, the district, people always say, well, why are we moving forward? Why are we asking about this now? Well, the reality of it is we've never stopped asking about this. When we had the satellite campus that came in, it was a fraction of the size of what it was supposed to originally be. And so from there, the original thought was that it was going to be, the replacements were going to be in phases. So you had the satellite school, and then you had different phases that came forward. But when the economy went down, as Dan mentioned, that project was taken away. What came back was the reduced fraction size version of the satellite school. So overall, here's some of the important points. We did the suitability study in 2007. Dan mentioned the engineering evaluations that we've done. We've done 13 engineering evaluations. 12 of them confirmed the conditions up at the high school that we use in our facility plan that the Board of Education approves as well as the state. We've done 3 Mercers in those years, 14, 16, and 18. So when we get the standard answer that you need to do another Mercer, well, we've done 3, and we've got the study in 07, the engineering assessments. We have the facility condition assessments. The one year that was missed is during COVID, when none of them occurred. We had an electrical evaluation conducted in 2018. Dan had mentioned over there in the building for the original satellite, the 121,000, we have designs for 95%. So we would need to bring that portion up to code and then have design money for the remainder of the full build out. The building itself, the estimated useful life, the building I believe is close to 53 years old. The infrastructure that we've mentioned several times, they're failing on there. The sewer, the electrical, the HVAC, the roofs, the central kitchen, cabinets, the furniture, the doors, steps, ceilings, the stairs, the slabs. So our list goes on. And then ultimately, the instructional programming, I mentioned at the beginning that it doesn't meet the needs. It's got 1960 design on the building, and we need a different type of education building to move us forward. This was validated. We started off, so before the presentation is coming before you tonight, we started with the staff up at Rock Springs High School. That was the most important place for us to start. We presented this information and asked them, okay, tell us what we're missing. Tell us what you experience on a day-to-day basis. And their information validates all of those issues that we've presented this evening. One more slide. So what we truly need is the funding for that remaining square footage over there for the replacement school. And we know, like we had mentioned, we have the 44,000 square feet that's over there. We need the funding for the remaining 120,000 square feet. And then, of course, for our codes to be brought up. Really important right here as we summarize, the land is ready to go. It is ready. So when that question comes forward about that we don't have the land, that is not an accurate statement. The infrastructure over there, of course, is ready because that plat of land in 06 was slated for a multi-school site. So it's got your power, sewer, water, and your utilities. And then you've seen through the sample of what a full build out may look like on that site. And I think that might be it, Zach. I believe that's our last one.
Questions or comments from the board? Any discussion?
Chair Jellicoe? One item I think that might be important for our community is, so what is the district doing to get the information out, and how can people help with this situation? So this coming Thursday, we have a public forum that is scheduled. It's here in the boardroom. You'll have the trustees and we'll have administration that's available. It's also for input for the district strategic plan, but also we can answer any questions about the need for a replacement high school. That is streamed, and it's from 6:30 to 8, so this Thursday. Next Monday, we have a dinner that is scheduled up at Rock Springs High School in the cafeteria. That will be a unique dinner for us because people will be able to see what that's like to eat in a cafeteria that is very limited in size. Then on Wednesday, the 18th, October 18th, we have a business luncheon that is scheduled here at the CAB. And that is for our business partners that support the high school and our other schools as well. On October 24th, there is a select committee on school facilities. So if anyone is interested in going down to testify, we appreciate the support of our board, of our elected officials. But if there are parents or students or anyone in the community that is interested in joining this, we need your support. The next day on October 25th, there is a joint appropriations committee meeting as well that the district also plans to attend. So another opportunity We know we have the parent involvement team for the high school, and we have a lot of active community members as well. So if you're interested, there's opportunities to be able to come down and let your voice be heard and share the reason why we do need a replacement school. And one final November 1st and 2nd, that is a school facilities commission meeting that the district, we would be asking permission from the commission if we could present during that meeting, just to share more information again about the need for a replacement school. And then following the meeting this evening, the district will be releasing a fact sheet, a press release that will have some of these talking points and facts listed in them, as well as the presentation tonight, of course, being a public information.
Thank you.
Chair Jellicoe,
Mr. Wright.
I think I'll go ahead and say things twice tonight because I think it's that important. So I'll say a few things now. Mr. Celeroli and Superintendent McGovern, I appreciate the in-depth presentation. There was a lot of information there. I think a couple of things stuck out to me. And in light of being facetious, I may not be great at math or maybe have a engineering background, but a lot of things struck me quite odd here. So our capacity for our cafeteria is 220 students. To me, with a current class for 2023 at the high school, 1,419 students, it would take 6.5 lunches, or round up 7 lunches, to fit all of those students into the cafeteria, and we have 3 built into the master schedule. I think it's our goal as a board to, number one, keep our students safe, and having a open campus, as we know from the past, has led to safety concerns and incidents that we all wish didn't happen. So there's obviously numbers at odds here to the capacity of the cafeteria and just the amount of time in the day. And I think it's important that we advocate for a new high school to simply keep our students safe. Number two, one of the things that stuck out to me was that 74%, I believe, was the number of the assessment showing fair to poor. We spoke about this at the last board meeting. If we want students to succeed, you have to provide them an environment to succeed in. And when you have a high school that's 74% deficient, fair to poor, we're not providing our high school students with the environment that they need to succeed. I'll just speak from my own experience. If it's 80, 90 degrees at the high school, you're not doing your best work. You're not concentrating your best. And obviously, with the slide alone on the temperature issues at the high school, because I know that's been a recent concern, the district has put a lot of effort into trying to address those concerns. And Dan, back to your point, it takes $98 million of deferred maintenance to Band-Aid a broken system, essentially. It takes $160 million to have something brand new where we can provide an environment for our students to have the best and to succeed. And I think that's what we need our public support on, advocating to our legislators and our congressmen and women to really support this idea. We want our students to succeed. We want them to stay in our community. Well, this is step one. We've got to support them in doing that. So I think the numbers speak for themselves. I'll say it again later tonight, but please join in, help us. Honestly, the board supports a new high school, and the district has been supporting a new high school for a long time, but we need the public to please express your concerns in the right manner, which is to, let me step back. I learned that the district is not the one who can decide whether a new school gets built or not. It's our state. It's our state funding that dictates whether or not a new school gets built. So to have the voices of our community express their concerns down certain avenues, it may not be the right place to express your voice and your concerns. Your voice and concerns need to go to the state. so that they can support us in building a new high school. So I'll try to put my thoughts together a little bit better before good of the order, but I think the numbers speak for themselves, and I'm asking the community to please contact your legislators. If you go to the district's homepage, there's a link at the bottom of the page where all the legislators' contact information is. Send them emails, send them messages, voice your concerns, put your voices down the right avenues to reach them, and hopefully we'll have some successes here. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Further comments?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Summers?
I guess one of the things that I took away, and I want to point out, is currently the building is safe, or we wouldn't have students in the building. But how many years is that going to last with these major systems in failure? And as we try to continue to put Band-Aids on them, how long are the Band-Aids going to last? That's a huge concern. And what happens if at some point that building can't safely house our students? And then if we don't have something new, what do we do then? Because we have nowhere else to put them. We have nowhere else to educate them. We can't do something like alternate schedules. I mean, where you have students going to school and some are starting at 5 in the morning and getting done. Try to run 3 shifts. We can't do shift work for our kids. It's difficult for adults. So my big concern is, while the building is safe now, how much longer can a 53-year-old building remain safe? And then I don't know if you said it, I know it's on the slide, but can you just reiterate one more time how many times you have attempted to fund a new high school for us?
I've been here almost 10 years and 3 times in 10 years. And that does include previous administrators, because we have records of that as well.
Thank you. Further comments? Mrs. Thompson?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to publicly thank Senators Kolb and Jones for attending the meeting, as well as Representative Larson and Commissioner Jones. I appreciate you guys coming and learning all about the issues we have at the high school. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for being here tonight.
Further comments? I'd like to bring up, because some of our classrooms are so crowded. As you know, the class sizes are not what we would like them to be, but some of them are so crowded that it's impacting the quality of the opportunities that our students have. And we owe our students the best that we can give them. And right now, the best that we can give them is a new building. We know for a fact that when Black Butte was built, the students that moved into that building, the pride that they had in that building and so forth, academic achievement increased as well. So we're talking about bringing opportunities to the students. I too attended the Southwest Wyoming Growth and Economic panel that was last Thursday. The influx that we're going to see here in the next few years, we don't have the capacity. We simply don't have the capacity to accommodate the student population that we're going to have. This is the time now to be seeking this new replacement building. And we appreciate all the help that we can get from community members, local leaders, and students. We're hopefully looking forward to having some students join us as we address the the select committee and the joint appropriations and perhaps the session next year. So thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to
Yes.
address a couple comments. One by Board Member Cole, right? As far as you were talking about how many cafeteria, how many lunches we have to have. You have to think back. MGT's study pointed that out and said that was at a time where we only had 3 lunches in less than, or right at 1,000 students. So that's back in 2007. So the system, that has been pointed out to the state of Wyoming. And for those of you who don't know, MGT is one of the country's largest consulting firms. They have been used almost solely in Cheyenne. They're used back in the day, they were used exclusively in the state of Wyoming. But that is one thing that they do. They go in and do building assessments. So it's not somebody that, was just hired out of a small town somewhere to come in and do something. These guys are big time. And the other thing is to address Board Member Summers. Safety is, we do everything for safety. Safety is always taken paramount. We have, with our good relationship with our fire inspector, he comes through our buildings, the state comes through the buildings. We request that OSHA comes through our buildings more for an educational. And as far as the structure itself, like I said, the structure is safe. There are certain things that we have to just, when the time comes, if it looks like it is going to be a safety issue, I will never let a building be unsafe. We can't do that. I'm not in the position, if I let that happen, it's time for me to retire or go away. Okay, but I've been doing this kind of work a very, very long time. I was a HVAC service, owned a company many years ago. That, you can't cheat on safety. So the building will continue to be safe as long as we can. And if we get a new building, great. If not, we will do what we have always done and take student safety paramount.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Summers.
Mr. Celeroli.
Can you, I know you spoke about it in the board workshop, but can you tell us, there were some of those projects that were slated, and some of them you said we would have to shut down the school for years to fix some of those issues. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Because that's another concern. If we have to fix something like that, then what do we do with the students?
Madam Chair.
Please.
When FEA came in, the company that we hired, one of the big questions was, okay, what can be done in phases? And, you can figure things out and do, obviously, the number one, and FEA also had an architect on their team, along with electrical, mechanical, all kinds of engineers. There was about 8 of them. And they said, they would prefer just to gut the school, just gut it and just go through it and redo everything. That would take at least 3 years. The other option was to look at, hopefully check the as-built, trace everything down, see where it comes from, where it originates, and try to work sections of it if it was possible. And for instance, a sewer line. If you're running a sewer line, I'm assuming based on the plans that I've seen, where the old, say, 71 sewer system stopped. If it was large enough, they added on some branch circuits. If not, they had to run some other ones. Finding those and then tearing out the floor to replace, because all of that is cast iron, and through time, sometimes cast iron will crack. What saves you is that it's underground and it's got concrete over it. But to replace that, they're saying it'd be like 4 years at a minimum to shut down sections of schools. Because like I said, they have to find like where the brain, where the start point is, and then figure out, okay, how far can we go that is a meaningful renovation. So you're talking minimum of 4 years to, and the other issue too, for anybody who's ever been in construction, when you look at that site, even if you move kids, a portion of the kids to another location, you still have kids there. Where does the contractor lay down? You have to have a construction site. Where does that happen? What do you do with the traffic flow up there for, big construction? There just simply isn't a place. When they brought about, renovations, like, okay, show me a plan, because I don't know how you do it, where you put the kids. Even if you did it in phases, did 75 here, did 82 there, how do you get that accomplished? Where do the contractors put their stuff?
Other comments?
Chair Jellicoe, just one more.
Sure, Mr. Wright.
I'll say something that was a little bit of a thorn in my side. I'm not going to mention how many years ago I went to high school here, but it's been a few. But I think it was pointed out in here that the high school is designed and built, I believe, Superintendent McGovern, you said for 645 students or somewhere around that number. We're talking about a 5-year projection of over 2,000 students. So we're talking about a school that was built that we're trying to have 3 times the capacity stuffed in that building, and parking is a big thorn in my side. I was a decent student who tried very hard to be on time and succeed at school. I was there at 5:30 in the morning, didn't leave till 6 or 7 at night often. And I can tell you, I received several parking tickets while going to school there simply because the capacity of the parking and the availability for the students is just not there. So we're talking about trying to keep kids safe, trying to give them the best environment to learn. That means not rushing, not getting to classes late, not worrying about parking tickets, not having accidents in the parking lot, not having people uh, uh, injured or more severely than that, getting in and out of the campus for lunches and what have you. But I just want the public to really understand that a lot of the problems that we see at the high school are purely because it was not made for the capacity of the students that we have there today. And we really need a new high school. Thanks.
Further comments or discussion? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 8B, the school improvement plans.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, and trustees. For those of you who are new, this is your first time through the fall projects, and school improvement plans would be one of them. Annually, each September, following the release of the YTOP data, administrators form school improvement teams. The teams consist of the school administrator or administrators and a variety of combinations of teachers, classified staff, parents, whoever the administrator puts on the team. So administrators and their school improvement teams had 2 school improvement planning work sessions together here at the Central Administration Building with me and my team. And several teams met and worked additional hours to complete their plans. In your board documents, you see the completed plans. At the final meeting, the teams participated in collaborative discussions about the school's biggest area of need. Elementary school improvement teams spent time with their paired school partners to discuss goals and possible needs for working together to increase and assure student success. Looking at those plans that are in your board docs, areas of need are then identified as priority practices, as shown in section 2 of each school's plan. As you may recall, the principals submit school improvement plans to our department. We share them with you for your approval. Section 3 of their plans asks for a plan of action that each school will take in the upcoming school year. Their goals must be measurable of what the adults are going to do to meet the terms of the goal for the year. There are action steps listed for each goal, and then the state data is also shown in section 3 of those plans. Section 4 is an overall summary of each school's plan. Leaders will revisit their plans multiple times this year to assure that progress is made. They can pull their school improvement teams back together to monitor progress, and if they need to monitor and adjust, they can. You will see a summary, a school improvement summary also in your documents. We kind of broke it down into individual goals from each school, so you can kind of see, it looks like this. It's the first one in your board documents. Yes, thank you, Zach. You're the best. As you reviewed the plans, maybe you've looked, if you haven't yet, you may have noticed that our schools have set improvement goals focused on increasing equity by continuing to work on establishing a systematic, data-driven intervention RTI MTSS model, a laser focus on instruction, and analyzing data to drive instruction and intervention in their buildings. We look forward to making notable progress this year in these areas from our schools. So we are asking for your approval so that we can submit these to the state. Any questions?
Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to say that I did appreciate, I could tell the amount of work that went into these. And I really want to thank the parent volunteers who helped out. I know their voice is very powerful when coming up with plans such as these. So I appreciate all the work done, and I can't wait to see what comes as a result of these great plans.
Thank you.
Further comment? Further comment? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the communications and correspondence or public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. As per policies B, DDH, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. If your comments have been previously submitted in writing, please refrain from addressing the board a second time. Written comments will be posted to the agenda in the written public comment section below. Written public comments must be received by 1:00 p.m. on the day of the board meeting and will be available for the public and trustees to view, but will not be read aloud at the board meeting. Policies B, DDH, and KD continue to state, questions asked by the public shall, when possible, be answered immediately by the chairman or referred to staff members present for reply. Questions requiring investigation shall be referred to the board or administrative staff for consideration and later response. Excuse me. We have received a couple of written public comments. Hopefully their questions were addressed during the presentation on the replacement high school. So I'll open it up to in-person public comment.
Hi again. I'm Casey Demori, and I'm the co-chair of the Rock Springs High School Parent Involvement Team. I'm here to give our promised PIT update. Our October parent meeting was very informative in nature. Part of our commitment is to provide an avenue to collect community feedback and help facilitate conversation with high school leadership. During this meeting, we requested that administrators present information on the district and the high school's accreditation process and status. The information was very helpful in understanding the WDE's involvement, what criteria is being evaluated, and what goes into our school report cards. Related to accreditation, we also did a high-level overview of the school improvement plan, the selected domains, and gave the opportunity for questions regarding the priorities for the 23-24 school year. Natalie and I were both very appreciative of the opportunity to join the SIP committee as parent representatives and look forward to more parent inclusiveness in the strategic prioritizing. There were some parent questions asking if Rock Springs High School has ever been on support before, what happens if we don't meet the benchmarks next year, and how long we can be on support. So there was a lot of just question regarding ultimately what will happen if we don't start meeting those WDE benchmarks. The district is actively working on finding all of those answers to our questions. We also had a really good conversation about the differences between standards-based grading and standards-based learning, and the district personnel addressed parent concerns related to school accountability at the high school level with regard to meeting deadlines and multiple assignment attempts. During the PIT meeting on November 6th, we will also be discussing the implementation of a parent volunteer team. Mr. Supes has expressed the need for more bodies in the high school engaging with students, additional or helping with traffic accountability, and additionally just being a positive role model. We will also be brainstorming additional ways parents can volunteer and be more involved in their kids' high school experience, as we believe it will contribute to positive academic outcomes. If you have any thoughts or ideas regarding that, please send an email to rshspit307, so rshspit307@gmail.com, and please come to the November 6th meeting at the main campus library. Finally, at our meeting, we discussed the importance of parents and community members advocating for a new high school. We will continue to communicate feedback related to the conditions of our existing infrastructure, but we will also be taking measures as parents to advocate for a new school. Soon, we will be sharing a letter to our legislators on behalf of the parent involvement team. We encourage all Sweetwater One parents to contact us and sign the letter in support. Again, our email address is rshspit307@gmail.com. The next PIT meeting is on November 6th at 6 p.m. in the main campus library. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, members of the board, Superintendent McGovern. As always, I have the list of very important dates for the month of October. We are now almost to 2 full pages, and it's not going to get any lighter. So if I can approach the board, I will hand those out.
Please.
And I do want to share a bit of good news. Rock Springs High School graduated another super senior today. So we have one more graduate to add to our ever-growing graduation percentage. So that one student calculated to 0.33% of our graduation. So we just need a couple more and we can go up one more point. But we had an outstanding little ceremony for this young man. And we want to congratulate Cody Henry for his graduation today. So thank you for letting me share that information.
Please extend the board's congratulations as well.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good evening, Superintendent McGovern, Chair Jellicoe, and members of the board. I'm Kelsey Johnson, a 5th grade teacher at Pilot Butte Elementary. And this year with our PBIS program, which is Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, we are doing something a little bit different to recognize students in a different way. In previous years, we've done pizza with a principal, but our principals are swamped and have lots of responsibilities and they're crazy. And we also wanted to get more members of the community involved. And so we changed it to private pizza parties. And so we have invited different members of the community to join us to celebrate those kiddos who are rising above, which match our school theme for this year. So this coming Wednesday, we actually have Miss Volunteer Wyoming coming in, and she's gonna eat lunch with the kiddos who teachers nominate for Rising Above. But last month, we had the opportunity to have Chair Jellicoe, Trustee Wood, and Trustee White to be there with us. And I just want to express my gratitude to you guys for coming in and spending time with our kiddos and offer you a small gift if I may approach. Thank you.
Speaking for myself, it was a privilege to be there. Thank you. It's a fun way to spend a couple of hours with students at Pilot Butte. So thank you very much for the invitation. Further public comment?
Good evening. My name is John Kolb. I'm Senate District 12 representative, which encompasses most of Rock Springs and north of town. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I guess this is about school facilities. Now, I don't sit on the school's facilities committee, but I will say, if you want us to be successful, that's Senator Jones and Representative Larson, the whole delegation that we have, we need information. We need facts. Not, we don't need emotion. We need something that we can stand up in the middle of a session and explain why, this is more important than, say, another need, because everybody there is probably going to have the same point of view as this board, Campbell County, whoever it may be, for their need. So what's going to set us apart? Facts. Maybe it's the security but I don't know what the rest of the other schools have for availability for having folks in the lunchroom, capacity wise. I don't know what that answer is, but we really probably need to find that answer out, because that's a selling point. That's an important point for school security. buildings, actually a graph of the escalating costs of repairing the items that you have. That's a cumulative. That would be helpful. I mean, I think there's a lot of things we could do as a strategy to be successful. At least, obviously, what we've done in the past hasn't worked. Okay, it's obvious. So if we do the same thing, it won't work again. So I think we have to figure out a new way of doing this. But your legislators need facts, so we can then disseminate those facts amongst our other legislators. I've looked at the people on the school facilities group, and a lot of them, they're friends of mine, and we can speak to them. And if we have something that works and we can sell that to them, we'll win the day in the argument. But if we get up there and just say, my district wants this, like everybody else is going to say, that doesn't set us apart. We need information, we need help, and you are the people, you're the elected folks, and we need to work together to come up with a plan to put our best foot forward to be successful. I think that's what I really want the takeaway to be tonight. And also, when I was listening to the presentation, we talked about we were third on the list with school facilities, but I missed the point about where we are currently. I assumed it changed. I don't know what that thing is, but those are things I need. And then why was Campbell, if Campbell, whoever's rated higher than us, and I don't have the full list in front of me, but whoever they are, we have to ascertain why. Why does school facilities say it? Because that's going to be a relevant point. I mean, it's a moot point to say their rating system doesn't work, because I've heard that people argue this in the past. So just all these points are relevant. And so at this point, I look forward to working with whomever so we can talk through what may be a better strategy than we currently were using in the past. So we need you to help us. It's really, I think, the bottom takeaway. And I guess I'm done speaking. I hope I didn't go over 3 minutes. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
No questions, Mr. Kolb, but I do appreciate your input, because from our board meeting, that was essentially my point. What can we do different? Being a part of the public prior to being on this board, I had no idea what it took to get the funding to even have a new school, but you hear all of the chatter and all of the Facebook comments you see as far as that goes. And unfortunately, I think we have a bit of a disconnect between our board and our district and our community. I'm asking our community to, unfortunately, set aside our differences. The district has to do the same. We have to set aside those differences and ultimately come together. We've had issues and comments made about kids passing out in classrooms because of high temperatures. Did you know that? Well, probably not unless you watched last time when, and you weren't here. We've had incidents that people don't want to refer to because it's sensitive, as far as tragedies that have occurred because of our cafeteria capacity. All of those things that the school district, unfortunately, get, beat down because these things are happening. But the reality is that we have to come together at some point somehow in order to make it work. And that's where we need to ask the community to say, okay, you have these issues. You're upset with the school district. Get it. Completely understand, because a lot of things have happened. But without having that information, without having those stories come forward where we maybe don't, as a school district, want to talk about, we need to be able to provide to you guys. And we need to be able to let you know that things like that are happening because the temperatures are so horrible, or because our capacity in the cafeteria is what it is. And if you don't pay attention to it, you don't know it. And so that's ultimately my biggest thing and takeaway from tonight is our community and our parents need to set differences aside along with the school district in order to say, this is what's actually happening. And although it's not something to be proud of, this is why we need that change. And I'm asking the community to be able to do that. And the school district as well, along with our administrators and everyone else that's involved, the trustees. It doesn't matter who you are. We're never going to make a difference keeping things behind closed doors.
Madam Chair, could I respond just to add something to what you'd said on the temperature issue? Now now we can talk about something really particular here. It's been said by a lot of people, well, it's so hot, people are passing out. What would be greatly needed is a graph of said temperatures, not I won't call it a story, but we need factual information because the hot for one person is not that hot for another. We need data that says the temperature gets up to X during the day, something like that. Those are substantive comments that we can use because everyone's going to what they'll do is disregard them. And it may be hot as, I won't use the word, but it may be really hot in there. And, but we need numbers. We need numbers, not just it's really hot. That's subjective. So I think that's one area we could probably focus in on. And if it is that case, we can address that with a real factual number, but realize too that starting a school year early is in fact causing part of the problem also, right? And that's the people that are on the committee. They're probably some smarter than me. So they're going to ask these questions. I guess that's what I want you to be prepared for. People are going to ask tough questions that are factual questions. If you don't have a factual answer, they're going to disregard your comment. That's where I kind of think we could do like a really an unarguable job that we're correct, right, in our statements.
And I appreciate the feedback as far as that goes. And so what I would ask moving forward, because we do have that dinner where legislatures have been invited to, all of the things that are going to move forward rather quickly, is that if you hear something like that, if someone from the PIT team comes up to you and says, hey, this is what we have going on in the high school because it's our students that are dealing with it, come back and give us that feedback and say, okay, where's the data for that? Can you tell us what the temperatures actually are, what time of year it is, whatever it may be as far as all of that goes? Because I think that we just get stuck, like you think, oh, that's a really compelling issue. And then like you say, well, it is compelling and I'm sorry it happened, but why? Where's your data? Where's your facts that support it? And so that's what I'd ask from our legislatures and anyone else is that ultimately, if you hear something and you could provide us feedback on what it is we can provide to help your argument when it comes time, then please do.
Madam Chair, maybe
Senator.
we could have a person to contact for the legislative body. I don't know who you'd want it to be, but if we have a point of contact that we could interact with, whomever you wish that to be. I'm not telling you who that person is, but somewhere where we can give you information, you can give us information as new things come about.
I think what I will say is that this is where we are right now. We're trying to prepare the facts and get the facts out there, and specifics would help. I agree. So we'll be working on that.
Okay. All right. Well, then thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Further public comment? Further public comment? Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the treasurer's reports. Mrs. Summers?
For the general fund treasurer's report, month of September 2023, the beginning balance was $8,101,287.36. Revenues received during the month were totaled at $5,726,769.52. Interbank transfers in were $11,192,750. Warrants written during the month totaled $10,473,003.17, and interbank transfers out were $11,170,000. Voided checks totaled $15,671.50, and the ending cash balance was $5,351,621.05. For the school lunch program, September 2023, the beginning balance was $714,192.51. Interest accrued during the month totaled $704.24. Revenue was $72,837.75. The CFP reimbursement totaled $6,747.50. For the FFVP grant reimbursement, there were $0 for last month. Reimbursement to the general fund from the school lunch program totaled $60,048.56. Bank transfers for the
VP grant totaled $0 for last month. The ending balance was $734,433.44. For the Head Start program, Child Care Food Service Program, the beginning balance was $103,496.50. Deposits totaled $348,847.37. Warrants cleared were $108,785.04. And the ending balance was $343 or $343,558.83.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report from the general fund, the school lunch, and the Head Start.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. The warrants. Mrs. Summers.
For the warrants, for September, checks number 162290 through 162297 totaled the amount of $6,550,298.56. The payroll numbers 129387 to 129402 totaled the amount of $27,784.46. Numbers 788012 to 789388 in the amount of $3,201,309.60. Voided number 788162 in the amount of $2,444.82. Check number 4376 totaled the amount of $22,750. Check number 3793641 totaled $2,150,000. Check number 3803757 totaled $1 million. Check number 3805640 totaled $1 million. Check number 3801440 totaled $325,000. And check number 3805168 totaled $60,000. And check number 10-2023-01 totaled the amount of $666. That concludes the warrants.
Is there a motion to approve the district warrants and release their payment?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schumacher. I want to declare a conflict on warrant 00162-603. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion, unless members of the board request specific items to be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. A, approval of the minutes from the September 11th, 2023 regular meeting. B, approval of the minutes from the September 11th, 2020. That looks like that should be 2023 executive session. Curriculum. C, approval of the purchase for CTE items. D, approval of the purchase for materials and professional development from Lexia Learning Systems, LLC. E, curriculum, approval of the purchase of materials and supplies from Reading Horizons. F, curriculum, approval of the purchase of materials from American Reading Company. G, facilities, post approval of replacement roof for facilities. H, facilities, post approval of replacement roof for transportation. I, facilities, approval of the bid for boilers at Westridge. J is an addendum item. Facilities, approval to declare the teacher housing, teacherage number 1300 on the Farson Eden School site as surplus property and authorize demolition of the house.
Please hold.
Finance, approval of the official bond and oath for the school superintendent. L, finance, approval of the resolution to amend the 2023-2024 budget. M is also an addendum item, human resources, approval of personnel recommendations. N, technology, post approval of the purchase of class technology software. O, technology, approval of the renewal of SmartNet and Flex licensing. P, technology, approval of the renewal of Power School licensing. Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a motion to approve all except J?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Okay, the motion passes. Okay, let's go back to J, the addendum item, approval to declare the teacher housing or the teacherage number 1300 on the Farson Eden School site as surplus property and to authorize demolition of the house. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Second? Second by Mr. Wright. Discussion,
Madam Chair,
please.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on why this house was being slated for demolition. It underwent a house fire in March of 2021, and it has been currently on the site as a bit of a hazard and an eyesore and needing to be demolished. And so I just wanted to make sure that the community knew that this was not a house that was, currently in use or one of our teacherages that we were taking, a teacherage away. I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear, that that was the house that was slated for demolition instead of having any confusion out there.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item number 13, climate survey update. Mrs. McGovern?
So what we wanted to do with this item right here is to update the board and the community on some steps that we've taken to support the climate survey. As you know, back in the summer months, we had representatives from Upbeat that came into the district and delivered the survey results on a bigger level, so an 80,000 foot level. And then from there, there was separate climate survey results that went forward to each of the building administrators. And so what I wanted to share a little bit, and then I know Nicole had some other information about a follow-up survey, but on the district level, a couple of the areas that came forward was making sure that our staff had a voice in decisions and input that came before them. And so one of the things that we've been doing is in our strategic planning meetings, we've really went to our schools and held the meetings there and asked our staff about the input of what they would like to see and ideas for ways to improve, and then also celebrate things that are going well. And then the other area that stood out on a district level was the importance of recognizing staff and celebrating our staff, which is always interesting because when you ask people, they'll say, "Oh, I don't really want that," but they do, because that came out through our survey. So one of the things that we'll be starting for in the November board meeting is during the recognition is celebrating staff that have been with the district for 5 years. And then in December, the staff for 10 years, January 15, and then you get the idea going through with 25 years and then retirees in the month of May. So we've done it before, but it was just for 25 years. And then, of course, for retirees. So we're going to try to make that a little more succinct for every month and really acknowledge our staff on the district level. Nicole?
Please.
We will be, sorry, I'm all congested. I apologize. We will be having a follow-up survey the last 2 weeks before Christmas break. We had committed with the survey at the end of last year, and then instead of surveying at the beginning of the year, making sure that there was a mark to start, get further feedback from the staff based off those surveys to take action steps. We'll survey again right before break, and then we will survey again at the end of the year.
Questions? Comments? Mrs. Summers?
I just wanted to know, have we started the coaching process with Upbeat? I know that was a big reason why we went with them, and I just wanted to know just kind of an overview of that coaching process and how we think it's working.
So yeah, the coaching process started right away at the end of last year when all of the results came in. They had numerous meetings with the district, with the departments, and then with the principals, where they went over the data, they answered questions, and then they worked with the principals, the department heads, and then Ms. McGovern and I on next steps based off of what the survey said and actionable steps. And they are available for questions and talking through things, and then they'll do follow-ups. And then, of course, we're going to be giving the survey. But so far, we've had really positive feedback on that. Hopefully, it comes to fruition. But it was a safe person for them to talk to. We didn't get, summaries or anything of the conversations, but we do know the action steps moving forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Further comments?
Madam
Thompson.
Chair, I did have a question. So I know that Upbeat started in the spring, and I'm curious to know if they had completed several exit surveys so we can look at that data as well if that comes in.
They didn't go over the exit survey data with you guys? I can't remember. Yeah, this exit survey data was completed.
Okay. And it may have been in that big stack that we read, so I might just need to pull it back out.
Well, you guys should have access to that, so we'll make sure that
Okay.
you guys get access, and if we need to present on that or anything, just let us know.
Okay.
Yeah, but those were completed as well.
Yeah, I think that was part of the initial
Yes.
discussion.
And they'll give those again at the end of this year for anybody that is resigning, retiring. Yeah.
And I'm curious to see, because with the original one, of course, was the baseline. And so we'll be looking forward to hopefully seeing some improvement, even though the staff has changed. But hopefully overall we'll be seeing an improvement in some of the areas. I'm
hope so.
hopeful.
Mhm.
So I think some of the things that we've heard regarding the professional development and the time they've had in their classrooms and stuff like that, hopefully that's an improvement in their perspective. Other comments or questions? Thank you. Okay, item number 14, good of the order. Anyone? Mrs. Thompson?
Just kind of piggybacking off of our previous discussion on the climate survey, Andrea and I were discussing that we still need to reach out to WSBA as far as the community parent survey and student survey, and possibly covering any areas that Upbeat did not meet for the teacher survey. And we were curious as to how the board would like us to proceed. Our idea is that we call Julie, see what her schedule is like, and start the process of getting those surveys together. It would be more board involved because, as you recall, we develop a lot of the questions ourselves off of a template that she has. So it's going to be a very customized. We're looking at the time frame of trying to get this together by January or February, and that way we're between the big holidays. We're not at the end of a quarter or a semester. And it's usually a less busy time of the year for most folks. We're hoping we could get a better turnout that way, but we want to see what the board would prefer before we proceed to contact Julie.
Thoughts? The timing sounds about right, kind of that lull in the winter time a little bit. Did they give an idea about how much time it would take to develop the survey?
I think it depends on how in-depth we want and how many questions we want to have.
But you said she has a template.
She has a template that she's done with other districts, and we could change the wording and add questions here or there wherever we wanted to address the issues that we want to find out about.
So probably what we need to do is maybe get that template or so forth and then schedule a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be agreeable to you?
Let me see if I can find our presentation, because I think we have that timeline in there.
Yeah. If you'll give us a second, Andrea's going to look up the timeline that was presented with us at that presentation from Julie. And I'm calling her Julie because I know I will butcher her last name.
Kasoric. Any other good of the order while Andrea's looking that up?
I do have one, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Chair Jellicoe, I'll
Um,
speak real quick while you're looking that up, Ms. Summers, if that's okay.
Okay, Mr. Wright?
A couple of quick things. One, I just wanted to echo what Mrs. Thompson said on gratitude for all the work that went into the SIPs. I know that a lot of administrator, teacher, parent time was spent on that, so I just wanted to echo that. And then I wanted to go back to what Mrs. Schumacher said. I think it's very important that we set aside our differences as a community and a district to really put our best foot forward to the replacement, to have a new high school. I think what Mr. Kolb said was valuable, and we really need to put some time and effort into identifying these facts. It seemed very apparent to me that he at least likes graphs, and that we should put some of our information in some graphical forms for him. And I think just from the parent perspective, I'd like to express my gratitude to the PIT for parents getting involved. I think that's one thing that as a board and as a community, we've always expressed the need for parent involvement. So thank you guys for being involved. Please continue your involvement by helping us gather these facts. I think any one of us on the board would be readily happy and available to gather these facts, get them gathered up and submitted as a whole so that we can present a stronger argument. So please contact us, please help us put together those facts. And then lastly, I just wanted to say thank you to Sage Elementary. They had a very warm welcome for me a few weeks ago, just letting me meander through the school. A lot of really great things going on. I saw smiles on all the faces. You know, there's some things obviously that everybody would like to see improvement. I know one of the things out there is some school safety with all the traffic and congestion and everything at the schools, and some concerns with older siblings at Pilot Butte and so forth. So there's things to work through, but overall it was a very positive atmosphere, very good things going on at the school. a lot of positive feedback on the Friday words evading me right now, but all the Friday classroom time that the teachers have had and all of the workshops that have been put on by the district. A lot of gratitude for the books that the district has purchased for the schools and the availability for the students there, and a lot of positive feedback on the Horizons program. So just wanted to say thanks to Sage. Maybe that bought you guys some time.
Mrs. Summers?
So just to quickly go over the Wyoming School Board Association and WSBA climate survey process. So their process would be to define the purpose. So they would work with the district to determine what we hope to learn from the survey, and then determine the participants. I think we've really covered staff and teachers quite a bit. I mean, we could ask other questions through this survey, but we don't want to over survey, I don't think. So we would determine the participants, and I think we're aiming now, towards students and community, and then design the survey, and then an invitation and administration of the survey. So they would send an invitation to the participants, the participation groups. Then there would be an analysis of the data, and then there would be a reporting. The approximate timeline would be for survey creation would be 1 week. For survey administration, and that would be after they would have met with the board based on our purpose and what we wanted to learn and get out of it. Then Julie would create the survey, and that would take her approximately 1 week. Survey administration would take approximately 2 weeks, and then the survey analysis would take 2 to 3 weeks for them to format a report for us based on the data. And just a quick overview of costs that I believe we approved when we approved to go with Upbeat. For the staff survey, it would be $4,000. The student survey would be $2,000, and the community survey would be $2,000. So we would be, depending on which groups we targeted, those are the costs associated. So that's just a quick breakdown of that process.
Thank you.
And then,
Go ahead.
And then I had another for the good of the order. So I know many of our community members know that the BLM has proposed the draft environmental impact study and resource management plan for the Rock Springs Field Office District. There are 4 options. Our local field office will be finalizing the draft. They'll take all the drafts and they will come up with the final product. And they are asking for comments. There are some things I have been reading through the RMP. It's about 1,000 pages long. There are some huge concerns with what is being called the agency preferred option. And one of those is that approximately 3,000 BLM administered jobs, so jobs that happen on BLM land, would go away in Sweetwater County. If we think about what happened with Halliburton a couple years ago when they left, what kind of impact that had. If we look at 3,000 jobs leaving the county, that's a huge concern. And so our local BLM office is asking for people to take a look. And I would say if you are interested in the economic section, that's where I would start. It talks about jobs. It talks about the amount of money to our economy that is on BLM land. I would say take a look at that, get involved, and provide those comments to the BLM office. It closes on November 16th, the public comment period, and they need those good substantive comments for why they should pick, one of the 4 options. And it would probably be best if they didn't go with option B from for the sake of Sweetwater County. And I think it's of concern to the district as well, because if we lose those jobs, we lose those kids. And, and we lose some of that tax revenue, property taxes and stuff like that. So I would just encourage people to take a look at that and look at becoming involved and commenting. And they are looking for, comments related to the plan and suggestions. You may suggest, going with alternative D because it provides this instead of that. So looking at the options that are provided and then looking at the impact it'll have on our community, which ultimately would be the school district's concern as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Further good of the order. I just want to remind everyone about the School Boards Association Annual Conference coming up November 15th through the 17th. If you're interested, please contact Mur and she will make the necessary arrangements and vouchers and stuff like that for your attendance. I think that's all I have. Okay, moving on to new business. 15A, Board Information, Policy DJ, Purchasing Authority. B, Board Information, Policy DJE, Single Source and Sole Source Purchasing. C, Board Information, Policy DJ/DJE-R-1, Nutrition Services Purchasing Procedures. I've asked Mrs. Bolton to check on this one with regard to Category 3, Paragraph 1, wondering why that $10,000 in that paragraph has not been changed to $25,000 as it has throughout the rest of the policy. So she's going to do some checking further on that one. So that may be a change coming up. D, Board Information, Policy DJE-R, Single Source, Sole Source Purchasing Form. E, Board Information, Policy DJF, Purchasing Procedures. F, Board Information, Policy FCA, Capitalization Policy. G, September 2023 Head Start Governing Board and Policy Council Monthly Report. I'd now entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of legal and personnel matters.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Wood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We are now in executive session. I do not expect any action upon our return. And again, it's for the discussion of legal and personnel matters. In a motion to return to our regular meeting. It's been moved by Mrs. Summers, a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Wood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.